welcome to episode 3 of the Luke Smith Show. We got a good show on tap for you all today. We'll be talking about playoffs, we'll be talking about Heisman, and some other chaotic things that have been happening in college football this week. So buckle up, we got a good show for you all today. We're going to go ahead and just kind of dive right into it, talk about the playoffs and the controversy around this year's playoff bracket and some of the best teams being left out. That's for you to decide. But I'm going to be giving my takes kind of on the playoffs today and what I think is overall, kind of going to happen, and give you my projections for this playoff brackets that we have this season. Overall, the bracket, I'm fairly happy with it. I know it's not perfect. There's definitely a lot of flaws to it. The two group of 5 teams is kind of what makes me shy away from this bracket compared to last season. But I think the teams that are in it are better than they were last season. That is excluding the group of 5 teams, which the spreads keep going up. So good job, playoff bracket committee, for picking that. But the criteria this season, not great. I wasn't a fan of it. And it definitely reflected into the playoffs selection. And I don't think for what the criteria was, they picked a terrible bracket. I just think the criteria was awful for the CFP this season. Gonna go ahead and start off just kind of reviewing some of these games. We got our first game of the bracket will be on December 19th, 8 o'clock. It is a rematch. 8-seeded Oklahoma hosting 9-seeded Alabama. Now, these two teams have played twice in the last 2 seasons. Oklahoma winning both of those games, one at Bryant-Denny and one in Norman. Oklahoma, where this game will be taking place. I really like Oklahoma in this game just because, I look at what Alabama did against Georgia. They didn't do much. Pass rush, they had no answer. And really, I just think that I think Oklahoma might even have a better pass rush than Georgia. We've seen all season Georgia's pass rush has struggled. They're catching fire lately. But Oklahoma, I would say, might even have a better pass rush than Georgia does. So I think if Alabama struggled against Georgia, it's going to be kind of the same story here. I think Alabama does not hold up there. And also, I'm pretty sure I've heard that Ty Simpson has been struggling with a back injury of some sort, as well as Kalen DeBoer and other head coaching job offers. I'll talk more about that later in the show once we kind of talk about all this. But right now, Alabama is a 1.5 favorite. I don't see it. I mean, Oklahoma's offense hasn't been great by any means. I think Alabama has the better offense, but we saw how the first game went. If Oklahoma can just replicate what they did against Alabama the first time, they should have no problem here. If Oklahoma can even do what Georgia did against Alabama, just make Ty Simpson uncomfortable. Because when you rush a pocket quarterback like that up the middle, keep him from getting outside on you, then you have a lot of success, and that's what Georgia did. They kept Ty Simpson from stepping up in the pocket, made him have to roll out to the left or right each time, and really, I think that was where Georgia's success came in, because the pressure was coming up the middle. Didn't give Simpson any time to really go through his progressions like he's been able to all season. I think if Oklahoma can repeat that, then they'll have a pretty good time here. But that Oklahoma offense needs to get going for me to be fully on board with Oklahoma winning this game, because they have not had the offensive production that they've needed to have to win to win the national championship. So I think it'll be very interesting. I think they got the defense to go far. The offense, though, I'm not too sure about. Still, give me Oklahoma to beat Alabama in the first round. So we'll move on to our next game here. Trying to find it now. It is Texas A&M versus Miami at 12 o'clock noon on December 20th, as well on ABC. Texas A&M opens as a 4-point favorite, or 3.5, over the Canes. This is an interesting one. This is one that I really think could go either way. I have no clue who's going to win this game. People seem to be giving Miami the edge. I think these are two very even teams. Quarterbacks, even. Running backs, even. Receivers, even. I mean, I think that this game is going to come down to one thing and one thing alone. Can Carson Beck and Marcel Reed limit the turnovers? Because that's been a problem for both of these quarterbacks. They have 10 interceptions both through 12 games. Carson Beck and Marcel Reed have the same amount of touchdowns, 25 touchdowns. So they both have 25 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. Carson Beck has thrown only 14 more passes, but he's completed over 60 more. But he only has, I think, 100 more passing yards. Yeah, 100 more passing yards than Reed. So very similar quarterbacks. Not similar in the way they play, similar in the stat sheet, of course. But Reed's a good quarterback. Carson Beck's a good quarterback. I'm very interested to see how this game goes. I take Texas A&M. I take Texas A&M mainly because I think that I don't think A&M is a better team, but I think the home field advantage is going to play into it. Give me A&M to beat Miami in the first round. To move on to our next game, we get into the group of 5 matchups. And I do want to talk about these group of 5 teams get again over some other teams here in a minute. But yeah. So our first matchup of the group of 5 is Ole Miss and Tulane at 3:30 on TNT on December 20th. Tulane really, I think, is gonna be outclassed here. Now, Ole Miss is a 17.5-point favorite. That's a problem. That is a problem right there. A playoff team should not be a 17.5-point favorite. I don't think that these group of 5 should have been in to begin with. I don't think we should include group of 5s in the playoffs. But with the criteria, you have to have one. So, I mean, I think this will be an interesting one. I mean, I don't see Ole Miss losing this game solely because, I mean, there is a big drop-off in physicality between group of 5 and Power 4 teams. Ole Miss definitely has the better physicality than Tulane. We saw that earlier in the season where Ole Miss beat Tulane, trying to find the score, 45-10 back in September. So I expect nothing less than that. I expect this to be a game where Ole Miss comes out and, takes care of business. Even without Lane Kiffin, I think they come out and win big. So give me the Rebels in that game. Not much to talk about there. I just really think Ole Miss will probably win that pretty big. And probably a team that will win even bigger is at 7:30 on TNT on December 20th. It is James Madison and Oregon. James Madison traveling to Alton Stadium to play the Ducks. This is a game, I mean, Oregon is a 21.5-point favorite. And, I mean, we got to address this with the group of 5 teams. I mean, come on. Really? I don't see how this is good for TV at all. I don't see how this is good for TV ratings. I don't see how this is good for ESPN or whoever is broadcast at TNT. I don't see how this is good for them. Because who wants to watch this? These games are most likely going to be over by halfway through the second quarter. Now, I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong. But I think that these games are going to be very, very boring to watch. And I think the committee, again, has not picked the best teams. They're picking the best teams for the criteria, which I don't think there needs to be a criteria. I think just the best teams need to be in. And if that happens to be a group of 5 team, if the group of 5 team happens to be in the top 10, we've seen that happen before with teams like Cincinnati in 21 and 22. Cincinnati made the 14 playoff, for heaven's sake. I mean, they get killed, but they made the 14 playoff. UCF, when they were, the alleged national champions, I still don't agree with that. But still, that UCF team was a top 10 team. It's possible for group of 5 teams to be in the top 10. So I don't think we need to give them an auto bid in. I think you pick the 12 best teams, the top 12 ranked teams. Now we're going to expand again because apparently that fixes the problem. Expanding to 12 teams didn't fix the problem. What is going to 14 teams going to be? We're just going to keep expanding until we fix it, and eventually we're just going to have March Madness, which, as a football fan, I'd love that. I would love as much football as possible, but it's going to kill bowl season. It's going to kill everything that college football is built upon. I don't think it's good to have these group of 5 teams in here. Now, is it good for their brand? Is it good for their money? Yeah, it's probably great for the group of 5 teams to be in it, but they have to place these great teams on the road in tough environments. I mean, I just don't think these group of 5 teams are built for that. James Madison and Tulane are 2 great examples. They're great teams, but for their leagues. I'm not knocking them. I'm just saying there needs to be better selection here. But with that being said, Oregon wins this game big. Probably 50-10. 50s into the 10s in this game. I don't think this is going to be a close game at all. I think this is going to be one of those games where Oregon just comes out and wins big. Same goes for Ole Miss and Tulane. So, not much going on there. The second round is where it's going to get a little bit interesting if everything I have predicted is true. You got Oregon and Texas Tech. You'll have Oklahoma and Indiana, and you'll have Ole Miss, Georgia, and then you will have Texas A&M, Ohio State. So we'll start off with let's see. We'll start off with Ohio State, Texas A&M, because that game would be on New Year's Eve. Now, I don't think that that's going to be a close game, because I think Ohio State is a much better team than Texas A&M. So give me Ohio State in that game. I think that Julian Sand and that Ohio State offense, man, that Ohio State defense, I just think overall Ohio State is a better team than A&M. And, I mean, I don't know if Marcel Reed is the best quarterback in the world, but I don't think he's good enough to beat Ohio State. Give me the Buckeyes. Now, moving on to our next game. It is 4-seeded Texas Tech going to be playing 5-seeded Oregon. I think Texas Tech wins. And here's why. I think that Texas Tech all season has been proving that they are a great team. Now, I was talking smack about them in our last show, saying that they were not as good. They haven't played this peak competition. But just looking at their statistics, actually sitting down and looking at their team, this is an impressive Texas Tech team that we were watching. I think they have a scary good defense, just from looking at their statistics. I haven't watched most of their games this season, but they have a scary good defense. The only game Texas Tech lost this season, I finally went back and looked into it, the only game Texas Tech lost this season was because they had a third-string quarterback. Third string. And even when they had a second-string quarterback, they won. That's impressive. That shows you are a well-rounded team. I give respect to Texas Tech. They've gained my respect over the last week. I think they're better than what I gave them credit for. Give me Texas Tech to go to the semifinals. Moving on to our next game would be Indiana playing Oklahoma in the Rose Bowl. This is a game that I can go either way on. I think Indiana has the better offense, but I think Oklahoma has a great defense. I think Indiana has a good defense, and I think Oklahoma has an okay offense. So for that reason and that reason alone, I'm going Indiana. But I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be probably low scoring. Maybe not as low scoring as the Big Ten Championship, but I think it's going to be low scoring. Maybe in the 20s, the 10s or something. I think it's going to be a low scoring game because Oklahoma has a very good defensive front, very good defense overall. You know, just an okay offense. Indiana, very well-rounded team, but I see the Hoosiers pulling this out, moving on to play in the semifinals. Now moving on to our last game, Georgia versus Ole Miss. Now, I heard a lot of people talking about, if Ole Miss and Georgia played again, Ole Miss would probably win. But that was several weeks ago. A lot has changed. I think right now, if it continues into the playoffs, Georgia is the hottest team in college football right now. They look impressive. Just looking at the SEC Championship, looking at the weeks prior, their defense has been hot lately. They have been killing it. The offense has looked good. Now it's been slow, but it has looked good enough to win. It hasn't looked like Oklahoma's offense, but it has looked pretty good. I think this is a game that Georgia is good enough to win, and especially with no Lane Kiffin. That is the biggest head scratcher of this whole playoff. Is no Lane Kiffin for Ole Miss. Ole Miss could have possibly made a national championship run this season, but now it's all in question because there's no more Lane Kiffin. I think that Kiffin was Ole Miss's secret weapon. I think he was the reason that the players played so well. Now, is Trinidad Chambliss going to be able to play as well for Pete Golding? I don't know. I seriously don't. That is something that I could not tell you. But I see Georgia pulling this out because I think Ole Miss is a broken team right now. I think they're in shambles. Now, we won't really get to see how good they are against Tulane unless they just come out and barely scrape that game out. I'm sure I don't see that happening. But if it did happen, that would really raise some questions and probably show that this Ole Miss team is not really much to be worried about. So, give me Georgia to go to the semifinals. Now, this would be different than what happened last season. We've predicted all 4 of the byes to make it to the semifinals. That was something that did not happen last year. None of the byes, I think, actually got to the semifinals. No, they didn't, because it was Texas, Ohio State, Penn State, and Notre Dame. They all played in the first round. So that's interesting. So this could be the season where all 4 semifinal bye teams get in. Which I think the bye teams this year are much better than they were last year. Because last year you had an Oregon team that was probably the best of the bunch, got blown out by a hot Ohio State team. You had Georgia, who was probably the worst Georgia team we've had in the Kirby Smart era. And then you had Boise State, which was Boise State, had Ashton Jeanty, but once you stopped Ashton Jeanty, you could kind of do whatever you want on them. So that wasn't that hard. And then Arizona State probably gave the best fight of the byes, which nobody really expected that. But Arizona State lost to Texas in overtime. So none of the 4 bye teams from last season got in. I think this is a year that we have, probably most of the semifinal games be with the byes. Unless the byes just mean that difference, just have that much of a difference than the teams playing in the first round. I mean, they could. I don't know. But these teams look really good, so I don't really see... I don't see these semifinal teams, or I don't see any of the bye teams losing, to be honest. So in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, that will be played on January 9th. Or excuse me, we'll do the Fiesta Bowl first. Fiesta Bowl is being played on January 8th. It'll be Georgia and Ohio State. Now this is a battle of probably the 2 best teams in college football, in my opinion. Ohio State's got the offense, they've got the defense. Georgia, they have a good offense when they play call well. When Mike Bobo was in his bag, Georgia has a good offense. But when they are just kind of, screen passes, throws across the middle, it's very inconsistent on the play calling. So if you get good play calling, Georgia has a very good offense, but they're so inconsistent with their play calling. But if Georgia has good play calling, then they have the offense. They now have the defense. If the defense stays how they've been playing over the last couple weeks, they'll have no problem in the playoffs with any team they play. So, I think Georgia beats Ohio State. I think now Georgia has a better team. Or not a better team, but they are hotter than Ohio State is. And if you would have asked me this, a month or 2 ago, would the Georgia have beaten Ohio State in the playoffs? I would tell you no. No, they would not. In fact, I didn't even think Georgia was going to have a bye for most of the season. But they've caught steam at the right time. They've gotten hot just in time for the playoffs. So if Georgia can continue this, they play like they played against Texas. They play like they played against Tech. They play like they played against Alabama. I don't think anyone in this bracket beats them. So give me Georgia to beat Ohio State. So moving on to the Peach Bowl, it would be Texas Tech in Indiana. That'd be an amazing game. I would love to see that game play out. I think that would probably be the best game of the bracket. That or Georgia Ohio State. So I'm really rooting for the semifinals because I think this is the best possible matchups that we're going to have. But Indiana and Texas Tech, that is a very hard one to pick. Because Texas Tech and Indiana are two good teams. Two very good teams. Texas Tech has the great defense and the great offense, and so does Indiana. They have the great offense, they have the great defense. So, I mean, it's just a matter of who comes to play that day. This is such a hard one to pick for me. I'm going to have to go with the higher seed on this one. Give me Indiana. I'm not confident with that pick at all. But if I pick Texas Tech, I wouldn't be confident either. Because I think that is such a toss-up game if it happens. Texas Tech looks like a good team. Indiana looks like a good team. Georgia looks like a good team. Ohio State looks like a good team. This would be an amazing top four. This would be an amazing semifinal round if it happened. Probably one of the best ones we've ever seen. So with that being said, with those two picks, we move on to the national championship where it is Georgia versus Indiana. Give me Georgia. I think, and like I said a moment ago, I think when Georgia is playing their best game, when their defense is on, their offensive play calling is there, the stars are out for Georgia. I think they beat anyone in this bracket, including the number 1 Indiana Hoosiers. 1 versus 2 as it's supposed to be, but 2 wins it. Give me Georgia to beat Indiana and win the college football playoff national championship. Now, if Georgia could get beat by Ole Miss in the second round, and if that happened, you can tag me on Instagram, call me an idiot, whatever. I'm just an idiot with a microphone. What do I know? But this is just my projection. I think Georgia wins. As unbiased as I possibly can be, I think Georgia wins the national championship. Now, moving on to our next topic of the show, it is, just some smaller stuff that I kind of wanted to go over really quick, and it was some of the awards and stuff. Indiana quarterback Fernando Mendoza named AP Player of the Year. That is, well deserved. I think. I think that's well deserved. Mendoza, he played an amazing season. Probably might win the Heisman. We'll get to that in a second. But he's a stud, man. Mendoza is a stud. I would love to see him win the Heisman. I've seen his interviews. He seems like a great guy. Seems like the kind of guy you would root for. I root for Indiana. I don't have any hate against Indiana. They held their own against Ohio State, which I respect. And Fernando Mendoza looked like a good quarterback in that game. Indiana is a good team. I was kind of skeptical on them because they hadn't played a lot of great teams. They played Ohio State, number 2 team in the country, and they won. Ohio State was number 1 when that happened. I think Fernando Mendoza is a great quarterback. I see him winning pretty big. I see him I'm losing my train of thought. Yeah, we'll just move on from that. I did kind of want to talk about some more coaching changes this season. We just had some minor stuff like the Georgia Tech offensive coordinator is going to Florida. The Texas Tech defensive coordinator, I believe it is going to Kentucky. That's just basically it from what I've seen. I'm trying to find more. I'm not really seeing much in that field. But we'll talk about a major head coaching problem later on in the show. I want to talk about the Heisman finalists. Just gonna kind of go one by one. and kind of read them off. So our top four is Fernando Mendoza, Diego Pavia, Julian Sayin, Jeremiah Love. Not in that order, but just that's our top four. So, as I get them pulled up, I am severely underprepared for this. But there was definitely, I think, some snubs in the playoffs. Or excuse me, not the playoffs. The Heisman finalists. I think some guys got snubbed out. I think I don't know if this was the best Heisman finalist class we've ever had. Usually, the top four are usually pretty undisputed in the Heisman race, but this year, just not so much. So, I really don't know who's gonna win the Heisman. We'll start looking at first. We'll start with the running back from Notre Dame, Jeremiah Love. He had 199 carries this season, 1,300 rushing yards with 18 touchdowns. He was only fourth in rushing yards and third in touchdowns. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't scream Heisman to me. Just doesn't scream Heisman. I think there is, I mean, I want to bring up Ashton Ginty's numbers from last year, if I can find them, where he had an amazing season and got snubbed at the Heisman. Yeah. So in 2024, he had 2,601 rushing yards with 29 touchdowns on 374 carries. He averaged 7 yards per play and had 30 total touchdowns, and 29 of those being rushing. He got snubbed of it last year. I don't think you can give it to Jeremiah Love this year. If you give it to Jeremiah Love, that's going to make so many people mad. Because Ashton Ginty, I think, should have won it last year. I think if you took Travis Hunter out of the picture, or if you put Travis Hunter on one side of the ball even, I think Ashton Ginty wins it last year. I still think he should have. Because he had an incredible season. That is unheard of. But a guy like Jeremiah Love, half the total rushing yards. Almost half the total touchdowns. Just a little bit over half. I don't think you give it to Jeremiah Love. In fact, I don't even think Jeremiah Love would be the best running back in consideration here. I think there should have been some other options that maybe could have gotten in over Love. But moving on to our next quarterback, it is sophomore quarterback for Ohio State, Julian Sayin. Sayin threw for 3,300 yards this season, had 31 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. His touchdowns are tied for second, and his INTs are tied 36th. So, pretty good season. 31 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. Not bad for the sophomore quarterback. Who, up until this season had never started. But just, and then I'm going to go ahead and list off the other quarterbacks on this list. You had Fernando Mendoza with 2,900 total yards, almost 3,000. 33 touchdowns, that's the most in the country, as well as 6 interceptions and an 88.4 QBR. You had Diego Pavia, who threw for 3,192 yards, had 27 touchdowns with 8 interceptions. And then, of course, Julian Sayin, I'll repeat his stats, 3,323 total yards with 31 touchdowns and 6 interceptions with an 89.6 QBR. Now, out of these 4 quarterbacks, looking at the stats, it is such a toss-up here. Someone's going to be mad that one person didn't win it. If I had to guess, it's going to be Diego Pavia. But I think Fernando Mendoza is second. I think Julian Sayin is third, and Jeremiah Love is fourth. That's how I see the Heisman race shaping out this season. I think Pavia is good, but I don't think he's the best. I like Fernando Mendoza. I wish that he would win it. He probably should win it. But I have a feeling it's going to be Diego Pavia. Probably not Julian Sayin and probably not Jeremiah Love. I really think it's down to Fernando Mendoza and Diego Pavia, even though Julian Sayin had the most passing yards on this list. He has 2 less touchdowns than Mendoza with the same amount of interceptions. The one thing that I don't believe about Diego Pavia winning it is that he only had 27 touchdowns without interceptions. So his touchdown interception ratio not incredible by any means. Not just like barnstorming. So actually, I'm gonna reshape this list a little bit. I think Fernando Mendoza is probably the best quarterback on this list. Julian Sayin at 2, Diego Pavia at 3, and Jeremiah Love at 4. But I do believe that Diego Pavia might actually end up winning this. I don't think he should. I think it should be Mendoza. That's my prediction. I think Fernando Mendoza should win the Heisman. He just has a whole lot better stats. The only stat Diego Pavia has over him is the passing yards thing, and that's only by about 200 more. Not even that. Well, yeah, 200 actually. So, I mean, it's an interesting race there. Julian Sayin has, 3,323 passing yards, but yeah, I mean, he has pretty identical stats to Mendoza, so it's gonna come down to him or Mendoza. I think they give it to Mendoza. I think Mendoza had a lesser team to work around than Ohio State, even though Ohio State won. I don't think Indiana has a better roster than Ohio State, if that makes sense. So I see Mendoza winning this. It'll be interesting though to see how that turns out. Another thing that I wanted to talk about on our show today was Army Navy, and I got one more topic to talk about after. Just gonna kind of briefly discuss it. But Army Navy game we got this Saturday. Army Navy game is always a great game to watch. Don't let the records deceive you. Both of these teams are even. They are both very good. And what I've noticed from watching an Army Navy game over the last couple of years is that the better team usually does not win. Like I'm looking at this, Navy is 9-2, Army is 6-5. Navy is a 6-point favorite. That spells Army winning so much. If you've watched this rivalry, you will know that this is going to be a low-scoring, physical game between 2 very good teams. I'll put it at that. 2 very physical teams. Navy's got the better stats. Navy should win. But I think it's very interesting that, it seems to never be the person you think is going to win. Never seems to be the team that you think is going to win that game actually ends up winning. So I think Navy needs to watch out if they want to win this game. The game is played in Baltimore now. I'm now just seeing that. Since when did they move it out of Philadelphia? I don't remember that. But, yeah, game's in Baltimore this year. Interesting. Navy's 6-point favorite. I wouldn't buy that for a second. Just be ready to watch a good game. Do not sleep on the Army-Navy game. That is Saturday, December 13th. We also got bowl season starting on Saturday as well. Kicks off with Boise State and Washington, as well as the Celebration Bowl, the HBCU National Championship, pretty much. It is SC State versus Prairie View. I'm not going to really talk about that game much because I don't know either. I don't know anything about either of those teams. To be plain and simple with you. Boise State and Washington, not really going to talk about that much either. But we got some bowl games Saturday. 2 bowl games. That might be some good watch. And then got more, next week, and then it kind of gets more. And then next Friday, we'll have the first round of the college football playoff. So I'm excited to see how the playoff shapes out. One last topic that I wanted to talk about on the show today was the whole thing in Michigan with Sherrone Moore getting fired and arrested. And I think this just adds on to the problems that Michigan has had over the last decade with their reputation. Now, the Harbaugh cheating scandal, and now Sherrone Moore and this whole alleged assault situation. I just got the notification when he got fired. I was thinking, well, why'd he fire? Why'd he get fired? Because, I mean, he came off a 9-3 season. He was building something. He had a freshman quarterback that was probably going to develop. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if Bryce Underwood transferred. Probably to an SEC school. But then you look into it and you're like, oh. Yeah, I mean, it is, that whole situation is crazy. I don't want to get into it too much in detail on our show. I just kind of wanted to mention it briefly. But Michigan's in trouble. Michigan is in trouble if they can't find anything else. And if you want to learn more about the Sherrone Moore situation, go look it up. It's interesting. I don't really have any thoughts on it, just other than it's terrible thing that happened. So if you want to learn more about it, by all means, do your own research. But I'm not going to talk about it much. I just wanted to mention it briefly. And it's really one of those things where it's just like you realize that we are in such a weird stage of college football when stuff like this is happening. But that's all I'll say about that whole situation. Kind of reverting back to some regular talk about bowl season. I think there's going to be some good bowl games. I need to get the bowl schedule actually pulled up because I have not really looked at it. I wanted to talk about the some of the teams that have allegedly been tossed from the playoffs, and really, when I say that, I really just mean I want to talk about the whole Notre Dame situation. So Notre Dame, they get pushed out of the playoffs. They get left out. Instead of saying, well, we did our best. We're going to go play our bowl game. Give these seniors one last ride. No. Notre Dame has decided they are not going to play in their bowl game to send a quote-unquote message to the committee. Now, if you ask me, that is a pretty soft thing to do. I think that it is not only unfair to the fans, but I think it's also unfair to the players. Bowl games are supposed to be a moment of, just something to remember for the seniors, for the players in general. You should have pride in playing in a bowl game. But now, Notre Dame has just decided that they are going to take their ball and they're going to go home. Just because they didn't get their way. Notre Dame reminds me of a spoiled child. A bratty child. That's what they remind me of right now. Because they didn't get their way. So now, they're going to just say, oh, we're not going to go to a bowl game. I think that's so soft. I think that is a soft thing to do. And now, they have cried about it so much that the committee is now granting them a automatic bid to the playoffs every year as long as they place in the top 12. What? I'm sorry. Why should Notre Dame get special treatment here? And I'm really sick of the whole Notre Dame, talking about how Notre Dame is elite. They're an elite program. Notre Dame is nowhere near to an elite program. They're just not. They're not an elite program. What has Notre Dame done since the 80s that has granted them any sorts of ability to be an elite program? They have not won a championship. They have not won a big game. They have not done anything. You look at their past. They have lost. They've made the playoffs 3 times. They lost to Clemson the first time. They got blown out. They lost to Alabama the second time. Got blown out. So what's the common theme here? They get on a big stage and they get blown out. And you might be saying, oh, well, they made the national championship last year. Look at their path. Look at who they had to play. In the first round, they played a first-year Kurt Signetti, Indiana, that was nowhere near even supposed to be in that playoff. They blew them out at home. Then you look at it next week, you'd be like, oh, well, they beat Georgia. They beat an SEC team. They beat probably the worst Georgia team under Kirby Smart that we've seen. And then they get to the semifinals. They play a Penn State team that had just as easy as a path as they did. They played Boise State and they played SMU. 2 group of 5 teams, basically. I know SMU is an ACC team, but that's basically 2 group of 5 teams. They beat Penn State because of an interception. Now, call it whatever you want, but that's just very lucky. And then you may be saying, well, they had a close game with Ohio State. They only lost by 11. Look at the box score and come back to me with that. They were down at one point 31-7 before scoring 2 garbage time touchdowns. Notre Dame was never in that game. They never had a shot in that game. So the whole Notre Dame is an elite program thing, come back to me with that conversation when Notre Dame does something other than schedule low-rated Power 4 teams and Group of 5 schools. Notre Dame's best win this season was USC, and we've seen USC. They're nowhere near at the same physicality that they have been. That's a good win for them. I will give them that. Then their other top 25 win, Navy. Really? Are we counting Navy as a quality win? If we're counting Navy as a quality win, that is soft. No disrespect to Navy, but that is a Group of 5 school that Notre Dame should be better than. And the only 2 top 10 teams, or I don't remember if Miami was in the top 10 when they played, but at the beginning of the season, they lost both of those games. They lost to 2 of the best teams on their schedule. So 2 of the only good teams they played, they lost to. Let's keep that in mind. And then you're going to go and tell me that they should have been in over Miami, a team that Notre Dame beat. Why are we saying that that game would be any different if played now? Because if you look at it, those teams are pretty similar to what they were in week 1. That game would have been nowhere different. Miami probably still wins, but that's a big if. That's ifs. We're talking about ifs. But we'll talk about what is actually true. Notre Dame should not have been in the playoffs. Here's why. If you're not good enough to play in a conference, you do not need to be in the playoffs. And I will say that very, very confidently. I've always thought that about Notre Dame. If you do not play in a conference, you do not get to play in the playoffs. But now, as long as Notre Dame places in the top 12, they're in the playoffs. So they're basically going to be in the playoffs every year. Because look at it. Notre Dame can just go back to scheduling terrible teams every week and get media recognition from it. They could schedule the bottom half of the ACC and they could schedule the bottom half of the Big Ten every season and they can get away with it and make the playoffs every year. Easy. Why would you schedule a big game when you have that at your feet? When all you have to do is get in the top 12 by scheduling terrible teams. You get in the top 12 that way. And then you win it. You just go ahead and win it. Yeah. So, Notre Dame did not deserve to be in the playoffs this year. And I will die on that hill. Notre Dame is a soft program. And we were really seeing that. They are playing the spoiled brat card. And really proving why no one likes them. And people try to tell you how special Notre Dame is. There are 10 programs out there that are more special than Notre Dame. I could name 10. There's 10 programs that are better. There's 10 programs that are more special. There's nothing special about Notre Dame. And I'm really sick of people trying to tell me that there is. There's really nothing special about Notre Dame. So, but the icing on the cake, the things that makes me the most mad, is that Iowa State and Kansas State, they opted out of their bowl games. for a reason. They opted out because they had coaching changes. They could not field a coach for the game or something. I don't really know the whole situation, but it was coaching changes. They had a reason. They got fined $500,000 each from the Big 12 for not playing in their bowl game. Notre Dame got fined $0. They did not get fined anything. And their reason was because they just, didn't make the playoffs, so we're going to take our ball and we're going to go home. We're just going to opt out. We're just going to go next season. That makes me the most upset about it. Because now Notre Dame just gets golden treatment for missing the playoffs. And then when you just cry about it, yeah, you're obviously going to get something. And that something was a automatic bid to the playoffs as long as you place in the top 12. I think that's soft. Notre Dame's a soft program. And if any Notre Dame fans are listening, you know what? Tag me. I would love to have a conversation with you about it. But the reality is that nothing is special about Notre Dame. And they did not get robbed of the playoffs. Go join a conference. Go win a conference. Don't just schedule a group of 5 teams every year. And mediocre Big Ten and ACC schools. And then come back to me. And tell me that you're special. Then I might agree with you. But right now, nothing is special about Notre Dame. Nothing. Nothing, Nathan, nada. Nothing. So now, now we have some teams, now we have some 5 and 7 teams playing in bowl games because teams are opting out, like it's just normal. We are really seeing the end of bowl season. We're watching the end of bowl season just unravel. Now, some teams might not even be able to play in a bowl game if this keeps happening. Hopefully there's no more opt-outs. Hopefully all the teams that made bowl games are now in. I know there were some other opt-outs outside of those 3, but I don't remember exactly who they were. I think they were smaller schools. But still, we're witnessing the end of bowl season. Just unraveling before us. So this bowl season, relax, enjoy it, because who knows if it could be the last one. But that is all that we have for our show today. Thank you so much if you are still listening to the show right now. I appreciate you so much for listening in and having a good time with us. I hope this was a good show for you all. And we will have probably a show out next week. It's been a little chaotic. I do apologize for only getting one show out this week. Just been a little chaotic with some behind-the-scenes stuff. But really do appreciate anyone who made it this far in the show. And we will see you all in the next show. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you later.